Greetings, I'm Erica Prbanik-Smith. I'm your host for this Journalism CommWeek panel. I'm an associate professor and head of the journalism sequence in the Department of Communication at UTA. And today we'll hear from some outstanding alumnae from the journalism program here at UTA. They are Beth Francesco, class of 2003. She's the senior director for the National Press Club Journalism Institute in Washington, D.C., and Linah Mohammad, class of 2017, associate producer for the Washington Post's flagship daily podcast, Post Reports. You can find full bios for our panelists on the CommWeek website. Now I'd like to introduce our guest moderator, Gayle Reaves-King. Gayle is an award-winning journalist and president of the Society of Professional Journalists Fort Worth Pro Chapter. Welcome, Gayle.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad to be here today. And this is, I think, an excellent panel that UTA is putting on, and I want to hear the answers that our panelists have to give. I'd like to start by asking each of you to tell a little bit about what you do in your current position, and if we could start with Linah.
Thank you, Dr. Fias, for hosting this, and thank you, Gayle, for moderating this panel. So like Dr. Fias just said, I am an associate producer on the Washington Post's daily podcast. So that means that I have a daily deadline. So every morning, I'll just very quick run through of the day. Every morning at 9 a.m. we have our morning editorial meeting. That's the meeting where we decide sort of the stories that we want to cover for the day, what each person is going to be working on for the day. We get our assignments for the day, and then in 3 to 4 hours, we are, recording interviews with mostly our reporters who are working on those stories, and supplementing those interviews also with, other interviews that we could be used, in the same segment, like recorded interviews. And that's how each producer makes a segment, and then the 3 segments are put together and to make the episode for that day. So around like 3 p.m. Our episode is ready, and then we publish between 4 and 5 p.m. So it's a very quick turnaround, and it is a combination of reporting. And now since we're all working remote, a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of like audio engineering also is involved. So it's a little bit of everything on a very tight deadline.
Linah, do you do the editing?
We also, yes, we do the editing. We produce, we produce and edit ourselves.
Okay. Beth, I'm fascinated by your job. I'd love to hear more about yours too.
I'm also fascinated by my job, which is a little different every day. So broadly, I'm the strategy person for reach and revenue for the Journalism Institute, which is we're the nonprofit affiliate of the National Press Club. Our mission at the Institute is to equip journalists with skills and standards that inform the public in ways that inspire civic engagement. What that means for people is different, from person to person. But what that means for me day to day, we're a team of 3. Like, we're not a big operation, we're 3 people. And what that means from day to day is that I wear a lot of different hats. So I can go from reporting on current journalism issues of the day, responding to a journalist who has been injured in, just doing their day-to-day work, providing resources on the fly to individuals who ask for help, getting our daily newsletter reported, edited, and produced, doing all of that day to day, and then also the fundraising piece of it. So developing fundraising campaigns, everything from the message we're communicating to designing the graphics, scheduling everything out, and then developing some professional development workshops on top of that. So it feels a lot. It feels like a lot of very different things, but because we're so mission driven, it's very easy to have the pieces come together each day.
Okay, that is a bunch of hats.
It is. It is. Keeps it interesting.
So you all both are alumni. Did I get the ending of the word right? Alumni of UTA. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how your time there at UTA prepared you for what you're doing now? And also, if you were back at that time, what advice you would give to yourself or, to current students about going forward? Beth.
Okay, so it's been a little while since I graduated from UTA. It was 2003. But I was recently at UTA as an employee for the last 10 years before I transitioned to this position last year. I would say that UTA prepared me in a number of ways for the media world. It taught me how to think differently about opportunities. It showed me how important diversity of all kinds is to news coverage. And it really gave me skills. My time in the classroom and in my student media work gave me skills that I really didn't appreciate at the time, but I did once I was in the field and got to practice a lot of that hands-on. I've always believed and said that students from UTA are scrappy. We know how to work hard and we know how to hustle, and that really comes in handy in an industry that's evolving and needs people to be vocal about change, especially now as that much of that change has to happen internally through diversity and inclusion efforts or through new products and audiences. I was really lucky to have professors and a student pubs team that saw a spark in me and then fanned that spark. I remember having an editing instructor, Dr. Beverly Horvath, who's now at Mizzou, who saw how engaged I was in my editing class and then created an undergraduate research assistant job for me so that I could further explore editing in a way that the class itself didn't necessarily provide. And so it was just really there were opportunities that came up at UTA that may not come up at other places. And I hope that students today say yes to those opportunities and seek them out. Getting to travel for coverage and conferences, just all of the hands-on experiences that UTA provided in a number of ways in the classroom, through internship access, through student media, really just, the world is so much bigger than you think it is. And if you say yes to the opportunities that UTA provides, you're going to experience that. And along those lines, I have, Linah can tell you that I've dispensed a lot of advice over the years, so I'll try to just boil it down. That student, if I could go back and tell myself something, it would be to go to class, take the language classes seriously, and learn math, learn everything you can. Get involved with student media, whether it's the Shorthorn, UTA Radio, UTA News in Espanol. Start something new if any of those are not your thing. But get hands-on work outside of the classes. You're going to learn a lot in your classes, but working in a newsroom, thinking independently, being a leader comes from those experiential learning opportunities. I have a couple more, I'm sorry. But what if you're comparing your goals to your peers' goals? Stop. Your circumstances are not going to be the same as the person sitting next to you in class or in your Zoom room in class this semester. They may be able to commit a lot of time to the Shorthorn. You may have 2 jobs and bills to pay and family obligations. That's okay. Just take advantage of any opportunity you can to try things on before you graduate into a really competitive field. And then you don't get the scholarship or internship or job that you don't apply for. You have to apply. So do that. That's the advice I would give myself if I could go back in time.
I think that's excellent advice. Linah?
Yeah, just going off of what Beth was saying about the UTA students being scrappy, 100%. Not only are the students scrappy, but also you have the faculty and staff. If they see a spark in you, if they see that you are trying, they really help you out. They do, whatever is in their power. So when I was at UTA, I actually did a little bit of everything. In the beginning, I thought I was going to be a print journalist, and I was just so in love with it. But then I discovered radio, and I just completely fell in love with audio. And so I worked a little bit at the Shorthorn, and then I did UTA Radio, and then I also did a little bit of TV for UTA News. Then for when it comes to the radio, just going off of again what Beth was saying about just creating your own opportunity, because. Our program, the communication department, the whole thing is very small. And what that does is it gives you opportunity to make it your own. And I think looking back at my time, I think that's what I did. And that's what, really helped me, even like now where, doing what I'm doing now at the Post. I wear a lot of hats, and a lot of times it reminds me of like, my time at UTA where, we were doing everything because we didn't have a lot. And so when my time at UTA Radio, it was just sort of the like flexible in the most beautiful way where, I would go to the faculty advisor, Lance Seguez, and it would be like, this is what I want to do. Can I do it here? Be like, sure, yes, you could do it here. And same thing with classes. They didn't have like the program that I wanted, so I sort of like made it my own. So if I were to give advice now, I would say either to like my younger self. It wasn't that long ago. Admittedly, it was only like 3 years ago. Still, like this is a double whammy because like I want to say like don't say no to opportunity, but also keep in mind, that your circumstances are different from other people, and that is okay. What's nice about journalism is that it's not a straight cut path. There's not a specific path that you need to be taking in order to be doing the thing that you want to be doing eventually. So, sometimes that means, taking it easy because, you have some family things that you need to take care of, some taking on a job, doing an internship, but sort of just make it your own, because that's the beauty of having a creative career, is that there's no like straight path to success. You can make it your own. And then the other thing that I would also say is try, learn as much as you can about other things, other specialties that are out there, but sort of pick a thing that you are passionate about and like learn a lot about it, whether that's science, whether that's medicine, whether that's math, engineering, anything else, because once you're out in the real world or like the professional world, there are like hundreds of others who also went to school for journalism. So like think of what's going to set me apart. So maybe you're really good at math, so maybe you can look into like data journalism, for example. Maybe you're really into sports, so you could that's like your specialty. But the thing, I think, if I were to go back, the thing I would do differently is definitely focus on something else in addition to like my focus on media, but something else that can sort of be like, think of it as like your little beat that you create for yourself, that's something that you are like passionate about.
I think that's some great points there. I won't tell you how long ago it was that I graduated from college, but I got a journalism degree, and then I got a BA in government, which doesn't sound very specialized, but I really think it's smart to learn how to, and I say write, but I mean do journalism, learn how to write, and then learn about something you want to write about. I really think that's smart advice. And I think y'all both mentioned internships. And, if there's one thing that I tell college students, it's, go get an internship so that you can figure out what a newsroom or whatever, kind of journalism milieu you want to work in, what that's really like. I think it was it's just the best thing to do, and to go work in your student media as well.
Can I add one thing too? Something that I wish that I would have learned a long time ago is that like, it's great to have a dream job in mind. But to do that means like, to get to your dream job means you have to do the work. Like you have to hustle. You have to, like Linah said, like, it's not a clear cut path to, you don't graduate and get dream job, like there's a lot of work that goes into it. Right. And that experience and taking the time with it and getting good at things is, at a small newsroom, a smaller local newsroom, like there are so many ways that the experience and the practice helps you later. And also like dreams change, and that dream job, you may get close to it and realize, wow, I don't want to do that. And it allows you to shift gears. I don't want to discourage having dream jobs or anything, but like to idolize a job, like it's just not necessary, or a publication. Like once you get there, you may realize it's not for you. and you may have discovered another passion along the way. So I really appreciate, Linah, that you've you know, how you went through the Shorthorn and then, you know, got to UTA radio, and that's when just like it took off, you know, like you flourished and we're happy, and like it was so cool to see. So I really appreciate that you talked about like not having a clear-cut path to what you think you want to do.
I think y'all are both saying something. There's a quote from Goethe, and I won't be able to get it exactly right, but it's about boldness. And it says boldness has magic in it. If you can begin something, do it, because you know it has magic in it to even try it to start. Well, you guys are really fascinating, and your jobs are too. And you both talked about being resilient and being, you know, I mean, if there's anything that journalists have learned in the last decade or two, it's that we have to be resilient and retrain, be willing to learn new things, and you know, see the other side, the other way that you can do something, and to go out and make it your own. If nobody else is doing it, you know, could I do X? You know, that's, you know, that kind of boldness is really great. And this isn't a panel about women in journalism, but since we're all women here, I have a question for you real briefly. I was told at one point, and I think it's probably true, that men have a tendency, if they're asked to do something they don't know how to do, they say, yeah, I'll do that. And then they learn. And then women want to be prepared. And that the idea is that if you would agree that it's good advice, that get some OJT, you know, be willing to step in and say, I don't know how to do all of that, but I think I can do it and I want to. So do y'all see that in your work? Would you agree, Linah?
Yeah, no, 100%. When I first started at my current job, we started the daily podcast post reports from scratch. So I was part of the team that initially launched it. And starting out, I didn't know, there were a lot of things that I had to learn on the job. I mean, namely like learning how to use Pro Tools. So in classes at UTA, and then in you know, at public radio, and then at NPR, we were using Adobe Audition and like some in-house audio editing software. Then when I one of the questions, you know, during my interview process, were like, are you comfortable using Pro Tools? I've never used Pro Tools before. I've never even seen the software. And I was just like, sure, yeah. I mean, I've never used. I was honest. I said I've never used it, but I said I'm willing to do it. Then when we actually started, I was at NPR where I was before the Post. I was mainly a producer, meaning I'd never like edited myself. The editing myself was something I was not able to do, and I struggled with it at first at the Post. But it took a lot of practice. I'm not gonna lie, and it wasn't an easy road. But it was definitely something that I had to learn on the job. And again, it wasn't like one of the fake it till you make it situations, which sometimes can be good advice. But I didn't fake it. I was honest. I said, hey, editing myself is very difficult for me, and it's gonna take me time. Like, I'll do it, but it's gonna take me some time to master the skill. And now I feel, I mean, we're 2 years from our launch, and I feel pretty confident in like my editing skills. And I mean, that goes just for saying, like with anything, you need to be flexible. You know, you need to be willing to adapt to your new surroundings, especially, I mean, when you're working in an industry like the news industry. I mean, you know, sometimes it can be as simple as sometimes, you know, like I said, in our 9 a.m. meeting, we have some plan, and then news breaks at like 1 p.m. and we have to scrap the entire show and start all over. And there is no room / there is no time to be like, oh, but no, I don't know how to do this. Like, you just have to keep doing it. That's like one big other advice I will also like say to students is that like you need to be flexible, and you need very quickly to adapt. You need to be able to think very quickly on your feet.
Yeah, if you're not on a daily newspaper deadline, you're still on a daily deadline. Yeah, and you got to turn it around. That's very valuable. Well, talking about, you know, changing and adapting to change, you know, we're all Zooming and none of us probably Zoomed. Well, maybe Lena did, you know, the equivalent, you know, but certainly I didn't, you know, more, you know, before a few months ago. I'd kind of, you know, I hope the people who invented Zoom are making, although we're not on Zoom now, we're probably on Teams, but I hope somebody out there is making a whole lot of money off of this because, you know, it's just amazing. So which brings me to the question of how the pandemic has changed the way that you work. Beth, has it changed what you do?
Significantly. I mean, our entire operating model shifted in March. We've been working from home since March. I think our last conversation about when we'll go back to the National Press Building, it will not be until next summer. So we're settling in even more than we already have. But we're not settling for less work. I mean, this has been, as I mentioned, we're a small organization, small national organization, small team, big ideas. Sounds really cheesy, but you know what I mean. The pandemic opened up opportunity for us after we got over some initial shock about, you know, what we were not able to do anymore. We focused very heavily on in-person programming. We focused, you know, we didn't have a daily newsletter. We started one. We found that what journalists need, and that's our audience, what journalists needed was news about the industry, news about what was happening. And a lot of the news that was coming out of other organizations that focus on the industry was really more observation and opinion. And so we wanted to report on real-time good work that was going on, not fluff, but real practical things that newsrooms were doing, including related to self-care for journalists. Like we really had this idea. And so without physical walls, without, you know, really any boundaries anymore, we started a daily newsletter, and it was like, let's start a daily newsletter. Okay. It was out by the end of the day. We report in real time. We did, like, Lena's team meets in the morning. We meet at 9:30 and we publish at 5 every day, or 5-ish. And we have, you know, a fresh Q&A about something that happened within the last 24 hours. We started a writing group. So I'm facilitating a writing group now. I never thought that would be something that I would be doing, with professionals from throughout the country. And that's a daily thing. We have moved from doing quarterly in-person programming, which is limited to the size of your room, right? Like whatever room you have available in our building, to programs that are drawing, you know, more than 500 people, and we're doing them weekly. So like, we're really trying to respond in real time. And this, while it has been incredibly challenging for so many people, including our team, we're trying to seize those opportunities to serve. And I think that that's what, in the reporting that we've done on what's happening around the country, we're seeing that in newsrooms. We're seeing that being resourceful, being creative about how journalists can reach communities that they weren't reaching before, because they're not constrained by the same kind of boundaries that they put on themselves. They don't go to the same places to find people anymore. And that's how our work has changed. And it's been really, I think, inspiring to me to see how newsrooms are adapting at every level so that they can better serve their communities. And I think that's what we're doing at the Institute.
That's fascinating. What y'all have turned to doing your job a different way, and in some ways even more inspiring or satisfying perhaps than what was happening before. Well, of course, you know, as we all know, the pandemic is not the only crisis, a continuing crisis, you know, going on in our world every day. Not even not, you know, putting aside weather and floods and fires and all that kind of stuff. But you know, it does seem to me that maybe not a daily crisis, but it's certainly something about it in the news almost every day is attacks and concerns about press freedom in the current environment, not only in this country, but I would say particularly in this country. You know, journalists being labeled an enemy of the people. I should have worn my t-shirt, you know, enemy of the people since 1797 or whatever with the press on it. But how concerned are you all about that in terms of, you know, Beth, the people that, you know, that you all are helping and dealing with, and Lena with your reporters and people in the field? You know, how much of a concern is that?
Lena, why don't you start?
Sure, yeah, I can start. I mean, I would say, like you were saying, Gail. I mean, this is a challenge globally. It's,
Right.
you know, press freedom is an issue, and in a lot of places in the world, it is you're putting your life physically in danger if you're a journalist. And so, I mean, you know, at the Post, I think we continue to cover it the same way we've been, you know, the same way we've been covering it globally. And then there was a this is like an initiative that I'm not personally involved in, but it's a nice initiative that the Post has started since the murder of its columnist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. It's the Press Freedom Initiative. And so what the Post basically did is it partnered with a few organizations. I can share a link. I believe it's the Reporters Without Borders, Committee to Protect Journalists, and a few other organizations as well, where the Post is making more room for these organizations to feature their work on the Post on the Post platform as well. I think they're providing them for free advertising. So that's good. I mean, something else I would say that the on the continuous attacks on journalists. Something that Marty Barron, he's our executive editor for the Post right now, constantly tells us. He keeps saying, you know, we're not at war, we're at work. And I that, you know, job, no matter you know which administration it is, no matter who's in office, no matter if, you know, it's an election year, if it's not an election year, we will just continue to do our job and continue covering the same way we've always have.
You know, I don't know that this is true, but it seems to me that in a lot of places in the country, press freedom is endangered by the actions of the official government, right? In suppressing news that's not favorable to them. Whereas perhaps in this country, you know, I mean, a lot of the recent attacks have come from police, and not at, as far as one can tell, and maybe I'm speaking too broadly, but in general, I think not at the orders of their bosses, or to protect, you know, something to keep their reporters from reporting on, you know, bad stuff about the government. But it's almost more of a personal thing within the ranks of the police, and that's, I think, perhaps even scarier. Beth?
I agree. I mean, so press freedom is you know, at the core of our mission for the Institute, but it really is at the core of all of our work, right? I mean,
Right.
when you have journalists physically attacked by protesters or law enforcement in public, and then arrested for being present and demanding accountability, like really verbally and viciously attacked online, and their loved ones attacked online, you know, being targeted and mistreated. I mean, not just for being journalists, but because of their race, ethnicity, or gender, or any identifier. Like, these are significant actions that are direct attacks on our democracy. Like, it's not just an attack on journalism; it's they're attacks on our very democracy, and we're in trouble. So, like, for example, any infringement on like Linah's ability to report the news should be a personal affront to me, not because I am a journalism advocate, and I realize I can speak a little bit more directly about this because I'm in an advocacy role now. But the, you know, Linah or any reporter's ability to do their job, if there's an infringement there, it affects me as just a person, right? Because it affects how I access and gain information that are going to help me make decisions about my life, right? How I vote, you know, how I spend my money, how I spend my time, where, you know, my imaginary kids go to school, like all of these different things that are just day-to-day decisions for people, like, are influenced, whether they like it or not, by the news media, who is providing the information that they can use to make those decisions. And so when we start thinking about any, like, something may not seem like an attack because it's not physical, but like withholding information means that, from, you know, for a report or for a story, means that I can't get that information as a reader, which means that, like, so if we think about all these microaggressions on top, like in addition to these like, you know, public aggressions, it's really, really a scary time. And I don't mean to foster fear in that way, but I think it makes it really, really important for us to have open public conversations within the industry and to expose what's happening for journalists to the public that may not see it in the same light because they've been, you know, their perspective has been colored in some way. We can't control a lot of that. What we can control is how we share what's happening. So, for example, you know, we do a lot of on press freedom. Yesterday, we issued a statement on behalf of Josie Hong, who was tackled and arrested in LA County this weekend. We had a panel, I'll put a link in the chat, but we coordinated a panel yesterday with journalists who had been targeted, injured, or arrested during the Minneapolis protests, who talked about this assault on their work, and then also some practical advice to get through it. We also, like you mentioned, this is not just in our country, like we often think about press freedom, massive press freedom infringements taking place elsewhere. The Institute is actively working with the Tice family, whose son Austin has been held abroad in Syria for the last 8 years. That anniversary and his birthday just passed. And then, you know, these are all big things, but it also happens, you know, as it comes to students, you know, student media outlets, student journalists working for their class assignments are struggling to get just basic information when they're doing their assignments, and are also mistreated on their own campuses because the sentiment, this national sentiment, has trickled down to reporting at every level. You know, it's one of those things that press freedom is not one organization's job to take on, or one news media outlets, you know, thing to take on. You know, it should be of concern to everyone. And
well, do you think that even though it's, you know, this attitude, you know, the antipathy toward the press has also trickled down or welled up or whatever you want to say, but that also I have a feeling that maybe the people out there broadly understand more about journalism because we are under such obvious attack, and because frankly I think the value, the incredible necessity of journalism has been proven over and over and over and over again in the last year in terms of things that came out that journalists had to dig for and work for. Do you see that, Linah, that people, you know, maybe it's a double-edged thing where they are more aware of what we do and the value of it than in the past?
I do see that. And I also think that it has been, I mean, if I may say that, I think it's been a conscious decision on the news organization's behalf. So you'll have places like, we have like a video series on how to be a journalist, I think 101. And what it does, it's like a really lovely video series by the video department that sort of interviews the journalists on how they're doing their jobs. So like whether it's like our media or sorry, not media, our art critic, how do you look at an art piece, whether it's, you know, talking to a journalist who broke a story, like tell us how you got there. There's also a new column started by the New York Times. Forgive me, I forgot the official name of it. But what it does, it goes behind the scenes, you know. One time they had a column from their international correspondents. Another time they had a column from their like podcast from the Daily. Right. Sort of just saying how they came up with the idea. Another thing I want to say is that like even for us on post reports, a lot of times it is a conscious decision that we make where we're like, we're going to lift the curtain so that our listeners can actually understand, you know, how this journalist thought about the story. So sometimes we deliberately ask questions like, how did you come up with the story idea? And then how did you find this person? How did you go about reporting this? So that it's not this like mysterious thing anymore where it's like anonymous sources and like people like, you know, trusted sources at a so-so-and department, so that, you know, the people can, you know, hear and understand, you know, what's actually going on behind the scenes. Right. I just want to add something else, sort of tangentially related to this. This is something that actually Dr. Proudest Smith said in a class one time, and I have never forgotten about it. And I still say it to others, like other reporters, as opposed to this day. We were in a class we were learning how to do like local reporting, and we were each assigned beats. And the beats were actually like the cities. One of the stories was, I think we were supposed to talk to like city officials, and Dr. P.S. was like, if you don't, she was giving us some advice about like not getting nervous. You know, we were like student journalists, I think third year. And Dr. P.S. goes, "You're the fourth estate, for God's sake." And I wrote that down. I remember in my notes, "You're the fourth estate, for God's sake." And every time I feel like somebody's being, you know, I'm calling someone and they're not giving me the information, or I'm feeling like, like, you know, like that's the saying, like somebody is being like a pain or not returning calls or anything. This is the thing that I think about often. I'm like, I'm the fourth estate. Okay, like you are going to answer to me. And it really, this is like something that I think like it's a very personal thing. It's not like a big, you know, post initiative or anything like that, but it really helps how like I think about what's going on around me right now in the world.
See, Dr. Francesco, you never know. You never know what these students are going to take away. I am the fourth estate. I'm sorry, Linah, did I interrupt you? Okay. All right.
No, I was done.
Well, yeah, I think you all have touched on this some already, but you know, what can journalists do? What should journalists be doing to gain people's trust and to make journalism, you know, something that people are proud of and believe in again? That's a tough question to put on you guys. Beth?
Well, I think Linah's, you know, very practical guidance on, you know, lifting the curtain and showing people how things come together is incredibly important. And I think there's been times that has been very, very successful. Whether that's doing that on the back end of the reporting or while reporting is going on, like through call outs and asking for personal stories and getting people involved. When we involve people in our work, they become advocates for our work, right? So that it starts small. You know, I think that it's also important to realize that there's like trust of an individual and there's trust of the industry, right? So there's journalists and then there's journalism. You know, and in both, the job isn't necessarily to be liked, it's to produce work that is true and so that it could be trusted, and to do the right thing, which is also very hard from day to day, you know, acting with integrity. You know, one thing that we talk about a lot is knowing the audience and opening the work and processes up to that audience. And to do, you know, it goes back to this, like, it's not a battle, it's the work, right? I so appreciate, Linah, you sharing that with us. You know, doing the work means explaining to, for me, like explaining to my dad, who does not trust journalists or journalism, or me sometimes, that the difference between what is being reported on his local news and what's being reported on his 24-hour network of choice are not the same thing. You know, like the difference between news and opinion, fact and opinion. I think the bottom line is that trust in our business and our personal lives anywhere takes constant work, and it takes a lot of time to build trust with people, and like one thing to destroy, right? And whether you do it intentionally or it's a perception of a perception, the thing that we try to keep in mind is that there's no one mass audience that you're trying to serve anymore, right? That you're trying to gain trust with. Right. There's always going to be people who do not trust you or your work. And you have to decide as an individual and with your news organization, you know, what is the work that you're going to be proud of every day? And are you really trying to win over people who are never, you know, who are just not going to ever trust you? Or is it better to spend your time, I'm trying to think of an eloquent way to say it, but like kind of working in the middle, working with the people who, like, we tend to think about things on the spectrum or black and white, but they're really like on a spectrum. And so, you know, you've got people who will trust the media, you've got people who will never trust the media. And then you've got a lot of people in the middle who are trying to figure out just how it fits into their day to day. So it's like, as an organization and as an individual, where are you going to spend your time? And then working to gain trust in that area.
Well, I wonder if that relates to broadening the communities that journalists write about and stay in touch with, and that know and care about, who see themselves reflected in your news product. Do you think those things are related, Linah?
Yeah, that was actually how I was going to address that. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, my parents also don't really trust the media. I mean, they don't like Beth was saying, they're in the middle. They're trying to figure it out. But, here you have these, two immigrants from the Middle East, in Texas, and they're like, what, like, what's happening? And like, you know what I mean? And so I think like the one of the most important things that we could be doing, as journalists, and this is like a much bigger thing, the industry could be doing, is that, that we look and sound like the communities that we're covering. So not only venturing out into communities like outside of my own to cover them, but also including those, those from marginalized communities, giving them a seat at the table, editorially when you're making the decisions. And I think it makes the biggest difference when you're looking at, if it's as simple as, I'm watching TV and I'm like, oh, this like presenter looks and sounds like me. Oh my God, I want to see what she has to say. Versus it being like a white male, like all the time. I'm more inclined to listen to a woman of color reading me my news than I am to a white male. I mean, I'm just saying from the perspective of like, I was talking like my parents. And so that is, I think, a very, very important thing. And just, diversifying not only our sources, but also diversifying our newsrooms,
Right.
including different people, venturing out into communities, telling the stories. I think that is how we gain trust, by doing our job the way that we were supposed to, by telling the people's stories as best as we can, and just like putting the, like, getting the sort of like, how do I say this eloquently? Like, when we're talking about being a journalist, we're often talking about, truth and how truth matters, and these concepts. But also we like, I think like this is how, that is how we gain trust, by just continuing on doing the job, seeking truth constantly, no matter the outcome. People will come around eventually.
Well, I hope that people out in the community see that you were talking about self-editing being a tough job, that journalists and journalists and their news organizations continually self-edit. We realize we need to change X, we realize we need to do a better job Y, and then actually fulfilling that. I can remember at the morning news when we were talking about in a meeting about for a brief moment there, for several years, the morning news had a women's issues beat, which I covered, and then they had it wasn't called, it was like a sexual preference, it's about gay and lesbian, LGBT, although we didn't say it that way then, issues. And a gay man in the newsroom was going to cover the beat. And I can remember a white male editor saying, well, can he really be unbiased in covering that? And I was like, Howard, you think you should do it? I mean, what, a white guy is going to be unbiased, about covering that issue? And it's a question of newsrooms not seeing people as the other, right? Because it's all of us. And that's, that's really a concept, a tough concept, I think, for a lot of people to get a hold of, that we all stand somewhere, and so that's why you have to include so many different voices, is because nobody is totally unbiased about anything. So you have to have these corrections. So, what suggestions And maybe we've covered this already to talk about, you know, what suggestions do you have for other journalists in getting out there and making journalism embraced and accepted and valued by a lot of groups other than, you know, just, you know, whites. What do you have to suggest to other people about how we do our jobs and young journalists coming up about that? I'll start with when I was, I've always told other students that one of the things I think they ought to do, in addition to learning how to write and then finding something that you want to write about, is to think about going and taking a business courses, so that one day maybe you can be the publisher as opposed to somebody who comes up through the business side. If we had journalists in the publishing end of it, you know, that would help our industry tremendously. What about you guys?
I agree with that, Gayle. In addition to the business side management, I mean, people who are very good journalists, reporters, editors, producers, being, you know, you're good at the job and then you're moved to management and no one trains you how to be a manager, and
Right.
No one trains you how to be adept at that. I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot of practice, and in the meantime, that practice can really impact the people coming, you know, your previous peers, and also their impression of how business is done. I have a couple of like quick things, you know, when it comes to like reflecting diverse communities and getting involvement. When you say diversity, there are usually two indicators that come to mind, right? Race and gender. But it's really important to recognize that diversity and inclusion it's age, sexuality, disability, veteran status, family status, work status. Like there's a lot of different ways that people identify. And so what Linah was saying was so spot on about, you know, it's not just seeing somebody, you want to recognize yourself in the people who are presenting your news, right? Like you want to have some kind of indicator that they know and can see and speak from your perspective. I think the other thing that has really come up in our work, especially in this area, is that it's really important for journalists, especially white journalists, which carry a privilege that, whether they acknowledge it or not, it's no one else's job to teach you about their culture, their background, or their life. Like it's your job to learn and be genuinely inquisitive, but your colleague, friend, or like somebody you know in the community doesn't owe it to you to be your guide. Like that's the big message that we're hearing across the board, that strain and the burden of learning is not on the person of color or the community that you are trying to tap into or to learn more about. Like it's really on you to do the work in understanding what their needs are so that you can reach them. One tangible thing that can help make sense of, or help you take stock of where you are, either as an individual or an organization. Like I always recommend doing a content audit for, you know, if you're an individual, a student journalist, take your portfolio of work, and or if you're an organization, take a week or two worth of your web content. Look at who is reflected in the photos. What are the choices that you're making? Who are you showing? What voices are you reflecting in the top third of your stories? Are you going to the same type of people every time? You can't necessarily tell race or gender from a name, but you can see what type of people. Are you always going to administrators? Are you always going to like the boss or the leader? Then you're really missing out a rich opportunity for people who are doing the work that you might be reporting about.
So we're just about out of time, but and I was going to ask Linah if she wanted to respond or add anything to that, but I'll give you another, and we really don't have time for it, but I can't help. I want to know your best war story. You know what I mean, war story, not really by war, but that would inspire young journalists to want to get out here in the world and fall in love with this profession the way I think we all have. So Linah, you can do either one. You know, tell me that or respond to the other.
Yeah, I did. There is something I want to add. And I think this is especially pertinent, I think, to UTA students, because the population at UTA, I think it was one of the most diverse spaces I have ever existed in
Great.
my time in the United States. And for thinking about long time. I mean, for the longest time in community, in the education department, I was the only like visibly Muslim student, and that was definitely something that shaped how I thought about news, and also shaped like where I wanted to go with this. I mean, and even now, I mean, at the Washington Post, I am the only hijabi in the newsroom, and we're talking, this is a giant newsroom. I think with the George Floyd, the protests that were sparked by the George Floyd killing, newsrooms were faced sort of with this to talk about these issues, to talk about how we view objectivity, who's covering who, the voices that we hear, like Beth was saying, who's featured, who are we talking to? These are things that only recently newsrooms have been sort of were forced to face, but these are things that, you know, Black journalists, the Hispanic journalists, you know, women, these are things that we've been thinking about for a long, long time. And so similar to what Beth was keeping of your content, we, for a very like little show in the newsroom, we have we keep like a spreadsheet of whose voices we're featuring.
Cool.
Who are the reporters that we're going to, which section are they from, and even like, you know, the ratio of male to female reporters that we're talking to, the ratio of like, you know, people of color versus white people that we're going for. And it's hard, it's not easy, it doesn't come naturally. It's a thing that you have to keep working at and working at again, and you have to make a conscious decision to, you know, face your biases. You know, we all have them. So you know, stopping, I would say the best way, I mean, as both as individuals and as organizations, is, you know, stop and reassess, and also like talk about these issues. We're different. I mean, we're all people and we all exist here together, but we're different. Our religion, our race, our background, our the places where we grew up, maybe our immigrant status even. I mean, this is a thing, again, that I've really struggled with, you know, when I was a student journalist. And I would, if I were to like, if the students watching this were to take one, they had like one takeaway from all of this, is to like, you know, don't be afraid. Talk about these things, you know, face them head on, and just know that all of these things, the combination of your experiences, you know, not just internships, not just your writing, oh, you're a great writer, but also your background, where you come from, the languages that you speak, your family, the way that you grew up, all of these things are what make you a good reporter, make you a great reporter. Not just, you know, you're a fat, beautiful writer, you know, or that you're an average reporter. I mean, I'd say like this is my biggest takeaway, and it's hard. I mean, it's still hard to this day, and it'll probably be hard till the end of times. But it takes like conscious practice. And then, oh, sorry, what was your other question? Best and worst stories?
Yes, but Erica, do we have any time left?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, yes, please. Please, I want to hear a war story. There's one you tell, come on.
Okay. Like, are we talking about like a time that I like done a mistake?
No, I'm talking about the story you will tell students that will inspire them to come and get into our profession, just and fall in love with it the way we have. An experience that would inspire them. You go, man, I want to go do that.
gosh, I can't.
Beth, do you have one while Lena's thinking?
Beth, do you have one?
I have a couple of stories.
And I think we
from
have the short versions of them.
the short version. Okay, I know. I'm sorry. I can go on a lot. My dog is about to start barking, so I'm a little. I'm sorry. I may have to. Yeah, you can see his tail. Linah, I'll defer to you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think one of the most satisfying, one of the most satisfying stories. This is the most recent one I can think of. So after the Beirut explosion, in early August, when it was, I like a lot of journalists. At first, I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and that I need to be doing more. And so I started thinking about what are some of the ways that I could be how can I cover the story differently? And so there was this video of this bride that went viral. Her bridal photo shoot was interrupted by the explosion, so it was all caught on video. Now her video went viral, and then she started appearing on a lot of Arabic news shows, and then I believe there was a profile done by Reuters on her. So the whole time I was trying to get a hold of her, but then I saw that other people already did a story. So I was like, okay, I still think there's a story there, but how can I make this a different thing that is still it's difficult to say, but I mean, all the stories that I was seeing are people who died in the explosion, but I kept asking what about those who survived? And so I kept looking, and then I found another video of another bride. And I played the video over and over and over and over again, and I noticed that they were in the same spot, not in the exact same spot, but they were in the same square. Now keep in mind, this is we're all working remote, and I'm doing this. I'm definitely not in Beirut. And I was just doing this, and I was calling people up, and I was just trying to figure out where these videos were taken. So after a day of digging around, I figured out that they were in fact in the same square, but we heard a lot from this one bride, and we didn't hear from the other. So I tracked the other bride down. I tracked both couples down, and I talked to them, and it made for this very cute story. If I may, I mean, it's a sad story, but so it turns out moments before the explosion, the couples had actually met, because they were both sort of doing their video shoots / photo shoots, and they talked about the marriage life, and how they're not going to be bachelors anymore. And then minutes later, the explosion hit, and it was this story of hope, and it was a feel-good story, and it was a story that people really wanted to read. And excuse me, I think that would be my most recent incident, where when I was done with the story, and when it published it, there was also a print piece to go along with it. When it published, and I got so many emails from people.
Oh, good.
Being I'm so glad that you did that. This is one of the best stories that I read out of Beirut. And someone even from Apple News reached out and were we're going to feature this in our feel good newsletter. This is a good story. And it was a moment where I was I feel like I did my part as a journalist, in this moment.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
I think Beth thought of a short one.
I thought of a short one, and this is inspired by you, Linah, telling that story. It's not necessarily about my journalism experience, but for the journalism students who are listening to this, Linah is amazing, and her work has just her path has just gone. I mean, I can't wait to see what you do next, and what you're going to create. Before I am doing what I am doing now, I was the student publications director at UTA, working with the students at the Shorthorn. Dr. Pianist and I had many shared students over the years. And I don't want to speak for her, but I will say that my best stories are not my stories. My best stories and the best moments are the ones that my students did, our shared students did, like the careers that they've made, the differences they've made in their communities, not just the awards that they've won, but like the impact that they have had, getting legislation changed, getting
Right.
people connected in ways and empowering their communities. So I hope that whoever watches this knows that your path is going to go all over the place and you can do really anything that you set your mind to. That's your work is going to make a difference. And there are challenges right now, but I truly, truly believe that the future of journalism is sitting in journalism classrooms right now. And there are going to be new ideas and new ways to reach audiences and new businesses. And I mean, just like all sorts of different things. And this is the class that's going to do it.
Excellent. Well, when I was at the Fort Worth Weekly and the editor there, I told people, and I still believe this, that a lot of times it felt like we were the court of last resort. If the daily paper, they went to their daily paper, and they weren't interested in hearing their story, or newspapers, or, and public officials. And a lot of times, we had the time because we were a weekly. We weren't meeting, we didn't have to cover every government, meeting and everything. Even though we had a small staff, we could pick and choose our stories. And so sometimes we could do those stories and help get justice for people and do all those things that we're out there as journalists to do. So, we're not the court, we're not all collectively the court of last resort, but we are giving voices to people and indeed changing things and providing them the information that allows them to change things, or to make the right decisions. And I think that's why we all continue in this when it's less attractive in many ways than a lot of other careers. We stick with it. So thank you. I'm great. I'm so happy to have been on a panel with you guys. Y'all are both impressive and out there doing great stuff. And what else can we do for us here, Erica, today?
Well, I thank you all actually for taking the time. I know you're all very busy. If our students have questions for you, is there a place that they can reach you, whether it's social media or email?
Yeah, they can get me at Gayle King at hotmail.com. GAYLERKING. Hotmail.
Okay.
And for me, I think I can type in my email in the chat now.
Okay.
Email or Twitter would be good for me.
Okay. Same for me. I'm Beth Francesco at Gmail or at Beth Francesco on Twitter. I put it in the chat.
Excellent.
And I'm going to find you that Gare
Yeah.
to you. So. One everybody ought to have.
Okay.
Yeah, it was so good seeing you all.
So good to see everybody.
Yes, and you all inspire me. In fact, Beth was absolutely correct. My proudest moments as a professor is seeing what the alumni do, knowing they came from UTA and have developed such wonderful careers. So thank you for what you're doing out there in the world. Thank you for coming back and sharing your experience with our students. I hope they're inspired by you.